On behalf of the National Endowment for Democracy, I would like to welcome you to the 30th annual and first ever virtual Democracy Awards ceremony and conference. I'm Andy Card and currently serve as the chairman of the National Endowment Board of Directors. Each year, the board votes to recognize the courageous work of individuals and organizations that have advanced the cause of human rights and democracy around the world, with the presentation of the Endowment's annual Democracy Award. NED first presented the award in 1987, and over the years has honored giants of the struggle for freedom and human rights, such as Václav Havel and Liu Xiaobo. More often, however, the award recognizes the work of lesser-known activists whose tireless work has done so much to advance democracy and democratic progress in every corner of the world. This year, NED pays tribute to the people of Sudan and the historic 2019 revolution when it honors 3 leading civil society organizations that have worked tirelessly to promote democracy, women's rights, and the rule of law in Sudan, with the 2020 Democracy Award. While grim news around the decline of democracy and the rest of authoritarian leaders often captures the headlines, Sudan's peaceful democratic revolution is a bright spot. However, democratic transitions are often complicated and very complex. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. As the people of Sudan grapple with the transition, the National Endowment for Democracy is committed to supporting them every step of the way. The State Department and the US government have also pledged to support the people of Sudan as they work to realize this historic achievement. So we are very pleased to have the Deputy Assistant Secretary for East Asia and the Sudans, East Africa and the Sudans, Ambassador Michaela James, with us to say a few words. Ambassador James.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, all. I'm truly delighted to be a part of this important event, and I want to thank the National Endowment for Democracy, Secretary Andy Card, President Carl Gershom, for including me in this really momentous event to honor Sudan's civil society. I'm also pleased to be on a panel with Justice Minister Nasruddin Abudari and Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, as well as the phenomenal civil society recipients. I want to recognize the Regional Center for Development and Training, the Nuba Women for Education and Development Association, and the Darfur Bar Association, all of which are being honored today for the work that they have been doing to establish and facilitate a democratic transition in Sudan. Your organizations are a testament to how important civil society is to a peaceful transition. We recognize the monumental changes that have taken place in Sudan in large part, due to civil society leadership. Now more than ever, it's important that the voices of women, of youth, and Sudan's marginalized communities continue to be heard and are a part of the transition in Sudan. We know who was the force behind the revolution. It was women and it was youth. They inspired, they challenged, they demanded many of the positive changes that we're seeing today. And so we recognize their energy, their dedication, and the enormous courage of the women and youth who brought peaceful protests that led to Omar Bashir's ouster. And so we believe it's only fitting that women and youth should play a significant role in the institutions that are going to shape Sudan's future. To that end, we commend the government for the recent actions they've taken to repeal repressive laws that were designed to undermine the status of women, specifically the end to female genital mutilation and the criminalization of that FMG policy. The restrictions on women's right to travel and the indecent dress laws. They have been repealed just recently, and we commend the Ministry of Justice for their work on those important efforts. But we know that changing the law is one thing, but changing social norms to protect women and girls from gender-based violence and other abusive practices will take a lot more work and will require continued and substantial efforts from all of us. We also want to recognize and uplift the demands from Sudan's peripheries, from Darfur to the east, from the 2 areas, to all of those who were victimized by violence in Khartoum and other cities, and who are calling for accountability, protection, and representation. Let me say a word about the US-Sudan relationship. I couldn't be more delighted to say that since the ouster of Bashir, the US and Sudan have been building a new relationship, a strong partnership. And we believe that the civilian-led transitional government offers the best chance in more than a generation to address the center-periphery divide that has kept the Sudanese people at war, and that will help implement structural economic reforms, and that will bring accountability for past crimes. We recognize the many efforts of the civilian-led transitional government to respect human rights, particularly addressing religious freedom issues. I traveled to Sudan twice since the Bashir regime has been overthrown. I went in April 2019, immediately following the ouster, and again in 2019 in August with Undersecretary for Political Affairs, David Hale. During my first visit, I met with leaders of the Forces for Freedom and Change and female entrepreneurs and activists. Undersecretary Hale and I also met with women and youth activists just before the civilian-led transitional government was formed. We heard the voices of the heroic actions that the people took, and we stand with the people in those efforts that they have undertaken. And I also want to note that I also had visited Sudan many times before, going back as far as 2006 when I lived in Juba. And so I can very much appreciate the profound changes that have taken place. I am inspired by the stories of the Kandakas and all that the women have been doing for Sudan. I want to note that the kind of programming that we're engaged in now is looking to ensure that women and youth and vibrant civil society continue to play a leading role. We are supporting programs that support women leaders, women-led projects, and we're also reaching out to programs that can bring more men in to support and be allies for women in their work. We are also supporting programs that enable civil society to engage in the political process, to be a part of political parties, to be a part of the peace process, and most importantly, a part of the government institution building. We're encouraged to see women taking on leadership roles in their communities and collaborating with the government on the kind of future that they want to see. We commend the continued action of civil society groups such as the Darfur Bar Association and all of those engaged in activities around the country. Women are peacemakers. So we look to the Nuba Women for Education and Development Association to continue leading and championing the activities in the two areas in particular to make peace and to see development in the Nuba Mountains in the two areas. On the Transitional Legislative Council, we know how important it is for that body to be formed and for civilian governors to be put in place. I also want to encourage the Constitutional Declaration's commitment to 40% quotas for women in the Transitional Legislative Council once it is formed. It's going to be vitally important for women to play a role, not only in that body, but also in local government and as governors. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that it's been more than a year since the massacre of the peaceful protests on June 3rd, 2019. The work of the National Independent Committee investigating the horrific violence that was perpetrated against people, including the extrajudicial killings, the sexual and gender-based violence, the torture, all of those investigations are going to be critically important. I met a lot of those victims when I visited Sudan, and I can say that we will be looking for and continuing to call for justice for those victims. To the Minister of Justice in particular, who I've met on several occasions and who I'm honored to be with here today, I want to note the United States is continuing to provide direct support to the Ministry of Justice, the leading institution shepherding legal reforms during the transitional period. We also stand ready to support Sudanese civil society and civilian-led transitional government in their efforts to design and implement transitional justice mechanisms. We're encouraged by the legal reforms that have just happened recently and that we know will be continuing. We think it's so important to continue educating people, particularly in the marginalized areas, about the positive steps towards a new Sudan. Transitional justice will be a vital effort in bringing about lasting peace in Sudan. But it must be tailored to local circumstances, with communities playing a central role in the design and the implementation. It's going to also be imperative that women and girls, youth, ethnic groups, religious minorities, and other traditionally underrepresented marginalized groups have a voice in shaping these mechanisms. Finally, we're all living through the very difficult period of COVID. We recognize that the global COVID-19 pandemic presents additional challenges for Sudan and the Sudanese people. The pandemic complicates an already important moment in Sudanese history, and it's a test for all of us working to build a new US-Sudan relationship. We must respond to the immediate crisis without losing sight of the goals of the transition or the importance of championing women's voices along every step of the way. So in conclusion, I want to note that the US government will continue to focus on how women, youth, and marginalized communities are able to meaningfully participate in the transition and the political process at all levels as Sudan goes forward. And I'm an optimistic person, particularly I'm optimistic about Sudan because of the commitment of the groups being honored today, as well as all the civil society groups who have peacefully led people to call for greater peace, stability, and opportunities that are inspiring Sudanese and Americans alike. The more we see positive changes taking root, the more support there will be in the United States for positive engagement. The future of Sudan must deliver on the promise of the revolution: freedom, democracy, and peace. But it also must deliver social and economic inclusiveness as well as justice. Thank you so much. I look forward to the conversation, and my heart and my commitment is for the people of Sudan to continue to see the country that they have struggled and sacrificed so much for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador James. Thank you very much. And please thank everybody at the State Department for the support they give this cause. I would now like to introduce the president of the National Endowment for Democracy, Carl Gershman. Carl has been at the helm of the endowment since its founding in 1984, and for the last 35 years has tirelessly advocated and worked to promote human rights and democracy around the globe. He is a remarkable leader for democracy. I would now like to recognize Carl for some brief remarks. Carl?
Thank you very much, Andy, for your very, very kind introduction. Thank you also to Ambassador James for your really wonderful remarks about Sudan, your support for our awardees, your commitment, and also for your optimism, which we greatly appreciate. All of us at NED attach enormous importance to this recognition of our awardees' contribution to Sudan's democratic transition. At a time of global democratic recession, when even once stable democracies in Africa and across the world are endangered, Sudan's transition offers a ray of hope, showing that 30 years of brutal dictatorship did not crush the spirit of the Sudanese people, but only strengthened their commitment to core democratic values. The remarkable breakthrough in Sudan has inspired Democrats everywhere, especially those in the world's darkest corners who are struggling for human rights and political freedom. Though the nationwide Sudanese uprising that began in December 2018 at first might have seemed hopeless, the masses of ordinary citizens who took to the streets calling for freedom, peace, and justice, especially women and youth, eventually forced the military to remove Omar Bashir from power and to agree to a 3-year transition period ahead of national elections in 2022. Sudan's transition faces immense challenges, but it provides a rare opportunity to transform one of the world's former pariah states, to seek justice for the victims of terrible human rights violations in Darfur, in the Nuba Mountains, and last year in Khartoum on June 3rd, to provide equal rights for women and ethnic and religious minorities, and for all Sudanese to finally enjoy peace and a better life. Progress has been made in the last year, but as we've already heard, there are enormous challenges and work still to be done, and we will hear about this during today's events. NED's grant-making program has been engaged in Sudan continuously since 1989. And the success of the December Revolution has only deepened our commitment to the Sudanese people. Support for the democratic transition in Sudan is one of NED's highest priorities. Our 3 awardees today are broadly representative of the young people, the women, and the marginalized groups who led the struggle for democracy. They played a vital role in bringing about Sudan's political breakthrough, and they will be key actors in the process of democratic transition that is now beginning to unfold. We honor them for their courage and for their commitment to democratic values and human dignity. We will now see a short video message from Sudan's acting Foreign Minister, Omar Ismail. Minister Ismail is known to many people in Washington for his earlier work as a democracy activist and an advisor to the Enough Project. His current position in the transitional government is yet another testament to the momentous progress taking place in Sudan and a clear indication of the government's commitment to changing how Sudan engages with the international community. It is now my great pleasure to introduce His Excellency Foreign Minister Omar Ismail.
It's a great honor for me to address the National Endowment for Democracy Awards today, which will honor the people of Sudan in recognition of their courage and commitment to bringing democratic change to our country. This occasion is all the more important for me as three Sudanese organizations whose work and activism strongly contributed to the success of the revolution and the toppling of the Bashir dictatorship will receive this year's Democracy Award. The fact that these three Sudanese organizations represent civil society, women, and areas that were marginalized by the previous regime is indicative of the political awareness and maturity of the Sudanese people and their ability to peacefully organize to demand their democratic rights. This is an inspiration to the people everywhere. I take the opportunity to congratulate the three awardees on their contribution to promoting democracy throughout the world, often at great risk to themselves and to their communities, and in difficult circumstances. Each and every one of you is a leader for all, and your sacrifices have been recognized by the world. I salute you.
Thank you, Foreign Minister Ismail, for that wonderful message. It is now my pleasure to introduce my fellow National Endowment for Democracy board member, Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, for a conversation with Sudan's newly appointed Minister of Justice. Linda has a long and distinguished career with the U.S. Department of State. Prior to her retirement from the Foreign Service in 2017, she has also been a wonderful conscience for democracy. In her last assignment, Ambassador Thomas Greenfield served as U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. In this capacity, she led U.S. policy towards sub-Saharan Africa with a focus on peace and security, democracy and governance, economic empowerment, and investment opportunities. Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield.
Thank you so much, Andy, for that kind introduction, and also allow me to thank Ambassador James for her remarks and for her service to our government. I'm so pleased to be with you all virtually today for NED's 2020 Democracy Award Ceremony and Conference. This event is particularly timely as Sudan is at a critical juncture in its nascent transition to democratic governance. And given this, it's critical that individuals with a deep commitment to democracy and rule of law are in key positions of influence in the Sudanese government. I'm honored to be joined by one such individual today, Sudan's Minister of Justice, Abdel Bari. Minister Abdel Bari has served as Minister of Justice in the Transitional Government of Sudan since September of 2019. Previously, he worked as a human rights activist with the Sudan Social Development Organization, a lawyer and board member of the Darfur Bar Association, a researcher with the Rift Valley Institute, and a consultant with the Open Society Foundation. He was a lecturer in international and comparative law in the department in the law department at the University of Khartoum, and he has an LLB and LLM from the University of Khartoum and an LLM from Harvard University, and most recently an SJD from Georgetown University, where I taught for several years. I want to thank you, Minister, for being with us today. And it's really a pleasure to see you in this forum. I'd love to open up with a few questions so that we can give the audience a feel for who you are. August 4th will mark the one-year anniversary of the signing of the Constitutional Declaration that brought forward the transitional period in government. And this was a tremendous success for the people of Sudan. But with this success, the transitional government has before it a large and intimidating agenda, a peace process with numerous armed groups, economic reform and recovery, building independent institutions, reforming laws, drafting a new constitution, preparing for free and fair elections and credible elections at that, and then COVID on top of everything. So, Mr. Minister, at this one-year anniversary, I would love to hear how you assess Sudan's democratic transition, where the transitional government has succeeded, and where will the transition be going in the future? Mr. Minister.
First of all, thank you very much for your kind introduction, and thank you very much for your question. I am pleased and indeed honored to be with you, and I am very grateful for the National Endowment for Democracy for organizing this event today. I think we have made some substantial progress when it comes to legal developments and law reforms. We have actually started a number of institutional reforms in all ministries, and especially as the Minister of Justice, we are in the process of restructuring the ministry. We have successfully removed a number of people from the former regime who were actually in very influential or decision-making positions. We have also successfully identified people who are committed to human rights, to the rule of law, to democracy, and tasked them with leading the administrations and departments of the Ministry of Justice. And the same thing happened in many ministries and government agencies, including the security and military institutions and agencies. We have also successfully enacted a number of laws to protect and promote freedoms and rights. And I think we still have a lot of work to do, but we are making substantial progress. As the Minister of Justice, for example, we have enacted 55 new laws, or laws that amend existing laws or abolish existing laws that are incompatible with fundamental freedoms and rights, or are not helpful when it comes to our aim of achieving democratic transition in Sudan. We are still moving, but not as much as fast as we want. We are facing a lot of challenges dealing with the bureaucracy that we have actually inherited from the previous regime. We are also facing, other problems that have to do with the way people are conducting business in the ministries and in other government agencies. But we are very determined to continue our progress, and we have the support of the people, the youth, and the organizations that are very keen to see us succeed and make more progress on our agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. The main refrain during the December Revolution was freedom, peace, justice. Last month at the 1-year anniversary of the June 30th march, Sudanese were once again on the streets calling for freedom, peace, and justice. So you know better than any of us that justice and accountability in particular is a primary demand of Sudanese. However, the issue of accountability and justice is a challenging one, as you have acknowledged, and it's a sensitive one for any government. How do you, as Minister of Justice, approach the issue of accountability? How do you approach holding perpetrators of gross corruption and human rights abuses accountable? Those people who have been accused of committing genocide. How do you move that agenda forward, Mr. Minister?
Well, we are doing that through a number of ways. First, we established an investigation committee to determine the violations that were committed last year in June, on June 3rd, and hold those who will be identified accountable. The committee is facing also some challenges, but they are making progress, and we will be able to have a report from them at some point this year. We are also doing that through the Ministry of Justice, the Judiciary, and the Office of the Public Prosecutor. In other words, we are doing that through the conventional justice mechanisms and institutions. As far as the Ministry of Justice is concerned, we are continuously talking to people to hear their views, to hear their perspectives about what they want us to do when it comes to justice. The Office of the Public Prosecutor has actually started a number of investigations, more than 100 investigations on issues that have to do with human rights violations and corruption. And just a few days ago, the office has started the process of indicting the leaders of the former regime for some of the violations and crimes that they have committed. The judiciary is closely working and collaborating with the Office of the Public Prosecutor. We also intend to establish the Transitional Justice Commission that is provided for in the constitutional document, and we think it will help us with holding people accountable, but also helping people to engage in dialogue and truth and reconciliation processes.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. We know that women played a pivotal role in the December Revolution, and we know that the Transitional National Assembly is expected to have at least 40% women members. And we congratulate you on lifting the public order laws that have prevented women from fully participating in public life. Can you tell us about additional plans you and the government have for improving the rights of women in Sudan?
Well, first, we will continue our reforms, our legal reforms. There are many pieces of legislation that are actually inconsistent with the rights of women that are provided for in the constitutional document, but also with the international human rights conventions that promote and protect the rights of women. So one plan that we have right now is to actually enact a new family law. The existing one actually is very problematic. It has a lot of deficiencies, and it is inconsistent with women's rights. So we will actually organize a workshop where women's organizations and human rights activists will be giving their opinions and their views on this law. And eventually we will have a new family law because the law is too defective actually. We also plan to establish a commission that is provided for in the constitutional document to promote the women's rights. And we are collaborating with the UNDP here in Khartoum to have a law that is actually consistent with international standards. There are many other pieces of legislation that we will review and we will amend, because we are very keen to ensure that women are fully protected, because they deserve better protection like any other group or category.
Good. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister, for your efforts on that front. The former regime imposed a number of laws that restricted basic human rights, including the rights of freedom of the press, association, and assembly. And you're given the difficult and challenging task of reforming many of these old laws to bring them into line with the demands of the Sudanese people. Can you tell us about your efforts on this front?
We are actually collaborating on this with the Ministry of Information. They have prepared all the draft laws that we need to ensure that the freedom of expression is fully protected in Sudan. They have decided to organize a series of workshops just to also have different perspectives and views. As soon as they are done, they will send us the laws to actually review them and ensure that they are well drafted, so that we can start the approval process. That is one. Number two, we have also decided to establish a corporation that we will name the Sudan Broadcasting Corporation. And the aim of this corporation is to actually dissolve all the media institutions that are owned by the state, or most media institutions that are owned by the state, and merge them into one corporation, which is the Sudan Broadcasting Corporation. We want to delink the Sudan Broadcasting Corporation from the state. Currently, many media institutions are controlled by the state. And if we are talking about a democratic transition, we need to have independent media institutions. And we think that this step is very important, the creation of this corporation and the merging of all the media institutions into this corporation. There are some institutions that are actually resisting. They think it is better for them to remain as part of the state, and we are actually having discussions with them. But the vast majority of the media agencies and institutions that are owned by the government of Sudan will actually be part of the Sudan Broadcasting Corporation. And we are making progress on that as well. We have a technical committee from different agencies, and they hold meetings. Maybe in 1 or 2 weeks, they will give us the final or the semi-final draft of the laws that will establish Sudan Broadcasting Corporation. Number three, currently, people are, in fact, freely speaking. They criticize the government. They criticize the officials of the government, and nobody is actually arrested for doing so. And I think this is one of the great achievements of the December 19th revolution.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Minister. We know that civil society organizations and activists played a significant and courageous role in the December revolution and the transitional period. What has been, in your view, the contributions of civil society to Sudan's democratic transition? And as we look forward, do you think, what do you think is the continued role of the Sudanese people in civil society during this transitional period?
Well, the Sudanese civil society organizations have been playing a pivotal role in Sudanese revolution, and they are still playing a very important role in Sudan's transition to democracy. Civil society organizations were over the past 3 decades very determined, very strong, and they actually continue their work under very tough circumstances. They advocated for human rights. They advocated for fundamental freedoms. They reported human rights violations. They trained people. They traveled to different parts of Sudan to actually speak about human rights and freedoms, despite the enormous challenges that they were facing. Many of them were detained. Many of them were forced to leave the country, but they continued their work inside Sudan and outside Sudan. I think during the revolution, they were also very strong and very central to the work of those who were actually struggling to keep the revolution going, because they continued the previous work of speaking about freedom, speaking about the right of people to revolt, speaking about the right of people to actually challenge their government. And I think the civil society organizations in Sudan right now are helping the newly established institutions or the new ministers and the new officials of the state to actually continue on the line of the revolution. They come to us, they express their views, they give us memorandums, they give us policy papers. They continuously remind us that we need to ensure that the new Sudan is based on human rights, is based on fundamental freedoms that are provided for in the constitutional document, and is based on universal principles of equality, non-discrimination, and democracy. And I think the more we work together, the more we will be able to actually move faster towards our common goal of building democratic and tolerant, diversity, accommodating, and free state.
Mr. Minister, I know that civil society organizations must feel tremendous confidence having you in that role, having come out of the civil society community. Can you tell us about your previous work with the DBA and with Sudanese civil society more generally? How did you get to where you are?
Well, I started my civil society work with the Sudan Social Development Organization, and that was actually a few years, actually 3 years or 4 years after I graduated. I did my first LLM at the University of Khartoum, and the second part of my program was actually about the mechanisms for protecting human rights in Sudan. And I focused on the role of the judiciary and the role of national human rights institutions. At that time, people were talking about the comprehensive peace agreement and about the rights that were actually enshrined in the interim constitution. So the Sudan Social Development Organization organized a number of public lectures and workshops in a number of universities in Khartoum. And I was actually leading those lectures and workshops. The plan was actually to establish human rights societies in each and every university in Sudan, and then create a national network for human rights university or college human rights societies. After that, actually, I traveled to the United States for my LLM. When I got back with a fellowship from the Harvard Human Rights Program to actually help the organization create a reporting system, an efficient reporting system. That was one of my plans when I got back. My second plan was actually to create a network of organizations that actually work on women's rights. And our focus was actually the conflict affected areas. Then after I actually did that, we faced a problem after the indictment by the ICC of the former president Bashir. So our organization was shut down. I had to actually leave Sudan to Kenya, and there I joined Open Society to continue my human rights work. And I worked with Sudanese human rights defenders and activists in exile to actually ensure that we have a clear strategy on how to ensure that the disclosure and shutdown of organizations inside Sudan will not negatively impact the work of the activists, both inside Sudan and outside Sudan. I actually continued my work with the DPA from a long time. And when I was outside Sudan, I was in charge of helping the DPA with drafting, submissions to the African Commission. And we did that in collaboration with the American Bar Association, with support from the National Endowment for Democracy, and we are very grateful for that. During that time, while I was actually engaged with the DBA and with other organizations, I was also writing about constitutional developments in Sudan, and I'm publishing from time to time, publishing academic pieces, publishing op-eds, and I think when the revolution broke out, we had a very good opportunity to intensify our efforts to ensure that we will have a government that would respect the will of the people and respect the freedoms and rights that we all deserve. While I was actually doing that, I was writing my dissertation at Georgetown, and one evening I got a call from someone who was actually from the Sudanese Professional Association, and he told me that they have decided to nominate me to become a Minister of Justice, and the story began. I was also contacted by the civil society forum, which was one of the blocks of the FFC, and they also told me that they wanted to nominate me. So I got support from the SPA and from the civil society forum, which were both actually members of the, and are still members of the FFC.
So finally, Mr. Minister, you've moved from civil society and now you've moved into politics. What are some of the challenges you've encountered in transition?
Well, the number one challenge is that in the past I was speaking about what I wanted, what we wanted as civil society organizations or civil society activists. But right now I have to do things. I have to think of how to put things into practice. And I think this is very challenging. It is very easy actually to talk and to tell people what you want and what they should do. But when you are actually the person who should do it, I think the story is different here. But it is also a good opportunity actually to implement things that you previously wanted other people to implement. That is, I think, the biggest challenge. And here, I think I could also add that the second challenge is that instead of focusing on one thing, on one area, now you have to focus on many areas. You have to deal with a lot of demands. You have to actually also, you have to lay down policies. You have to implement policies, which is also very challenging, especially when it comes to the work of the Ministry of Justice.
Well, Mr. Minister, I have no doubt that you are up to the challenge. You have shown your commitment to the people of Sudan and to the organizations that put you forward for this very important position. So thank you very, very much and for your service, and thank you for spending these few minutes with me in our fireside chat. I could spend the whole day talking to you, but I know that there are probably people waiting for us to conclude. Thank you again.
All thanks to you for this conversation. I really appreciate it, but I would like also to thank the National Endowment for Democracy for its continued support. I know that through the years of al-Bashir, one of the organizations that were consistently supporting the Sudanese civil society organizations was NED. And I am very grateful for that, and I am very grateful for this day, the honoring of Sudanese civil society organizations, and I am even very honored to see that the DPA, my organization, is one of those organizations. So we cannot actually thank you enough.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Now I'm honored to turn to my fellow NED board members, Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, Congresswoman Karen Bass of California, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York, to present the 2020 Democracy Awards. Following the award presentations, we will be joined by Senator Chris Coons, House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Elliot Engel, Ranking Member Michael McCall, and Congressman Don Kildee to give brief remarks. These four gentlemen have been leading voices in the U.S. Congress for freedom and democracy in Sudan, and it's a tremendous pleasure to have them with us today to share some thoughts. Thank you.
Hey, Ben Sasse here, Senator from Nebraska. Obviously, it's a lot more fun to get to do this type of stuff in person, but at least we get to do this. The Democracy Awards are a great opportunity each year to recognize folks who work tirelessly to promote and to grow democracy and people getting to be represented across the globe. This movement has created a framework for millions to enjoy more freedom and to celebrate human dignity. This year, we recognize a few groups who have done a bunch to serve their communities through education and hardworking advocacy in pursuit of their commitment to bring democratic change to Sudan. I've been asked to highlight the work of the Regional Center for Training and Development of Civil Society. It's one of these amazing groups. They've been at the forefront of the fight for democratic processes in Sudan for 12 years now. Their work, providing youth with the education necessary to engage in the political process as informed citizens, that work lays the groundwork for a bright future for the Sudanese people. We know that this transition to democracy isn't an easily won battle. Hearts and minds must still be persuaded, but that's why this work and these awards matter. Through all the hardships you all at the Regional Center for Training and Development of Civil Society, the RCDCS, have faced, you've kept your head held high and you've not given up the fight. That's how we win the long-term debate here. So, for myself and for many folks around the world, and on behalf of the National Endowment for Democracy, congratulations. Thank you for all of what you do, and please keep up the work. You've got a lot of us cheering for you.
When this regime came to power in 1989, nobody thinks that it will continue for even 6 months. I personally think that 6 months and then I will come back to my teaching career. And then the 6 months become a year, become 2 years, and then it continues. Most of the youth who took a leading part in the revolution, they have been trained in the regional center, whether through our previous work in the Constitution building, whether in the civic education about the democracy, about conflict resolution, about peaceful resistance. National Endowment for Democracy should be proud of this as well. They support the Regional Center for the last 8 years. We have done a lot of work with the youth leadership skills. Even some of the youth have been trained how they could do the best practices in Parliament to try to prepare the youth for the next era.
هدف انه استفاده من المعارف والمهارات اللي تلقيناها من خلال المشروع في المركز الاقليمي هنا، انه نتلمى ونشتغل مع بعض ونشتغل مع بقيه الشباب في ربوع السودان وننقل المعارف اللي اكتسبناها من خلال المشروع اللي تدربنا فيه في المركز الاقليمي.
طيب، وانا كدافع لي بصوره شخصيه، المركز بيقدم تدريب ومهتم بالقضايا اصلا من اهتماماتي، قضايا الشباب، قضايا المراه، قضايا الديمقراطيه، جزء كان له علاقه جزء كبير بالدستور، كيف انه الشعب يشارك في صناعه الدستور، الديمقراطيه، الانتخابات. يعني أنا بصورة شخصية مهتمة جدا بكيف حتى قبل سقوط النظام ليه الأحزاب ما تشارك في الانتخابات، والمركز الإقليمي يعني برضو قبل سقوط النظام وقبل التغيير الحاصل ده كان بيهتم وبيشتغل في الانتخابات وبيشتغل في صناعة الدستور. فدي كلها كانت دوافع لأنه أنا أكون جزء من المركز أو أكون متطوعة فيه كده.
These young people has gained a skill of how they could find ways and means of doing their work under hostile conditions. And I think they build their resilience, they build their capacities of how to deal with the various kind of atrocities.
متفائل جدا وأشعر بأمل كبير جدا. احنا ماشيين صح، ماشيين نحو تنمية وطننا. بتمنى أن الدراسة تسهم في المشاركة في وضع السياسات العامة والاستراتيجيات اللي تخدم إدارة البلد في السودان، ونمشي لاتجاه التنمية ورفاهية وحقوق الإنسان.
Not all the civil societies are given enough room for the young people to lead. So these are the areas which we would like to see that young people in the New Sudan can have really good kind of political participation, whether in their own political parties or whether in having a leading role in on the parties or as watchdog for the local governments.
As a member of NED's board of directors and the chair of the Africa subcommittee in the House, I'm especially pleased to be with you to virtually present NED's Democracy Award to the Nuba Women for Education and Development Association, or NUEDA. Since 2002, the NUEDA has devoted its work to promoting the active political participation of women and girls, helping them to gain access to education, healthcare, and job skills. Women were at the forefront of the December Revolution, which brought forward Sudan's democratic transition, bringing attention to the importance of women's rights and human rights in advancing democracy. With NED's support, the NUEDA trained hundreds of marginalized women from communities in the Nuba Mountains on leadership and activism to empower them to participate in peace talks, advocate for women's rights, and address pressing social and political problems in their communities. These women have been and will continue to be important local and national voices for enshrining women and human rights in democratic Sudan. Throughout the December Revolution, the women NUEDA led protests and were at the forefronts of identifying and formulating democratic demands, including ensuring full respect for human rights. NUEDA continues this important work. It is working to promote national women's agenda, advocating for legal reforms to protect women's rights, and training women to take leadership roles in national and state level parliaments. I want you to know that Congress was excited and inspired by the protest movement in Sudan, but even more so by the fact that there were so many women leading the way toward a more democratic Sudan. It is my honor to present the 2020 Democracy Award to NUEDA. Congratulations on this great achievement.
what is keeping me is the situation of the women also I'm seeing, who are coming from Nuba Mountain, coming from Darfur, coming from Blue Nile, coming from even from some areas within the middle of Sudan, who have no education, whom they feel they have no role at all. So that was, I saw like I have a role, I have to do something for my community, and especially the women. My organization called Nuba Women for Education Development Association. We have a plan to train and build the capacity of the community, the youth, the women, because we know that definitely the time will come. But people need to know their rights. And even this right, they need to know their legal, their political, their social rights, their citizens' rights. And this is what we've been doing for a long time. And also supporting women. Some of them, initially, they were not having that courage to speak in front of men, even to say that I've been beaten at home. But when we train them, they become aware of their rights and how to address even this violence with their husbands, with their people in the community.
والله نحن محتاجين لها لأنه نحن كنا عايشين في دولة ما ديمقراطية، يعني كنا حقوقنا ما عارفينها، عشنا كنا مغمحين كده مما قمنا، يعني تنشئتنا من صغار ما عارفين حقوقنا ده شنو وده شنو. ده من كبرنا ووعينا عرفنا حقوقنا وبقينا نطالب بها، يعني كل ما تمشي لقدام بتعرف أكتر.
أنا حضرت ورش كثيرة في منظمات كثيرة، لكن هي منظمة نويدة هي كانت يعني المنطقة الأساسية اللي أنا نشأت فيها وقدرت أمتلك له قدرات، فأنا بشوف هي أفضل الأماكن، عشان كده أنا بتواجد في كل ورشة موجودة.
Our project, leadership project that we started like 5-6 years ago with NET is really a very important project for us as women in Sudan. Women had to know that they have that strong role to change themselves and change the community, and especially working for the coming generation. The training we have today is about advocacy and the importance of advocacy in political participation of women. This training is special because we are trying to have some women, make them ready when the government announced that they need women to be nominated in parliament. We will have women, young women who are ready, who are qualified to participate in the parliament. Before, as Nubas and especially people coming from conflict areas, we hadn't chance to be in the parliament. But I think with this revolution, the chance is there. The whole community was out actually for the revolution. But women, we are really behind it very strongly, and they were even leading in the revolution. And I was so happy to see that what we have been struggling to do for a long time, it is now that we are seeing happening in front of us. Going to the Nuba Mountain, going to Blue Nile, going to these areas, very far, facing a lot of challenges and a lot of threats, it is now that we feel that we really did it. And we are happy that we supported each other to have or create change in this country.
Hi, it's Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, representative of New York's 21st Congressional District. As a member of NED's Board of Directors, I am pleased to be with you virtually to present the National Endowment for Democracy's 2020 Democracy Award to the Darfur Bar Association. For over 15 years, lawyers from the DBA have been at the forefront of defending fundamental freedoms, human rights, and the rule of law. During this time, the DBA has represented thousands of innocent victims of the genocidal regime of Omar al-Bashir, including activists, political prisoners, and students from the country's most affected conflict areas. The DBA carried out this critical work despite grave risks and constant threats to their safety, and often endured arrest, harassment, and abuse. During the course of Sudan's democratic revolution, they provided pro bono legal assistance to ensure the release of hundreds of demonstrators arbitrarily arrested and abused by the Bashir regime. You are truly role models for human rights and the voice of every individual and the voice of democracy. Congratulations.
والله في المعتقل الرباط على 4 مكان في الكورين وفي اليدين على المهلين بيقولوا بسلك شاقي والسلك بربطوه في الكورين بيجي بيلفوها في الرقبة برجعوا بيشدوه في الكورين لا تقدر تدنقل راسك لا ولا تقدر تمشي جاي ولا جاي.
كم من
فترة 18 يوم. والله ما مرحلة نصل لدرجة العلاجات ولدرجة علاج. هاي واصل ناس مهمين هي دارفور دو بيتواصلوا معي في العلاجات وكده. أنا إذا كان ما قابلت مهمين هي دارفور كان ما بيتعالج.
In 1996, some lawyers from Darfur collected themselves and then they constituted Darfur Bar Association. When we began, the membership was not more than 50 only. But now it's more than 1,000.
In 2012, one of our students, at Islamic University, called him Abdul Hakim Muhammad. He was assassinated, by the NES. We are sending a letter from the Chancellor of University to tell them, he must investigate, the reason of killing Abdul Hakim. The police and the NES, they attacked us inside the office. One of my colleagues, was wounded, and me also, I was arrested. Before, they releasing me, they are sending me, to Shendi NES facility there, and I spent like 2 weeks, alone, in a room, without anything, and even there is inside the room no light. At that time, I'm thinking, the price of the freedom, is very high. Just thinking for my colleagues, and my family, just for my mother, they don't allow for her, to visit me, and it's a very difficult time.
نواجه انه يؤدم الانسان إذا الحياة ما قدمت لك اوريدي هيودوك محاكم وحتتعدم لأنه ده الواقع الموجود إذا ما في سند قانوني الناس دي هم بيبحثوا في فرصة عشان ما يعدموا الناس ويقتلوا الناس سواء كان بالقانون سواء كان غيره.
From we established the DPA till now, we targeted by the former regime and arrest and detained many times. And now we are so very happy that others outside of our country like me appreciate or making the change and the democracy for our country.
Freedom is one of the important things we have now. Nobody can detain anybody. You can protest, you can do anything. But the life became difficult for us, for the ordinary people. We have to stand. We have to stand to fight the odds and everything encountering us.
Thank you to the National Endowment for Democracy and to Elizabeth Hoffman for the kind invitation to speak to you all today. Let me start by honoring the work of three incredible organizations. Congratulations to the Regional Center for Training and Development of Civil Society for their efforts to engage and train youth throughout Sudan on democracy and activism. Congratulations to the NUBA Women for Education and Development Association for their work to train local women to be activists for peace and advancement of women's rights. And congratulations to the Darfur Bar Association for their work to provide legal assistance to the Darfuri and for advocating for human rights. Like you, I believe the people of Sudan deserve a civilian-led democracy and a chance to live without fear or violence. I have visited Sudan several times, talking to government and civilian groups and learning about how the transition is truly progressing. Last summer, the United States House of Representatives passed a resolution I authored that urged all sides to continue to peacefully work together to transition power to a civilian-led government that respects human rights and the will of the Sudanese people. This bipartisan resolution demonstrates that the U.S. and the world is watching Sudan and cares about its future. I've been heartened to hear of recent legislative achievements in Sudan, especially in advancing women's rights. These laws, which criminalize female genital mutilation, allow women to travel without a husband's permission, and repeal the indecent dress code, are important steps in the transformation of Sudan. Standing up a resolute and strong civil society requires the work of many. Today's honorees represent critical pieces to build the rule of law and ensure a civilian government has the capacity to lead. You are all a testament to the recognition that it is the youth and women in Sudan that will be a driving force in the success of this civilian government. My congratulations to all of you for the work that you've done so far, and my sincere wish for your continued success in advancing peace, democracy, equality, and justice for all in Sudan. Thank you.
Congratulations to the winners of the 2020 Democracy Awards. I'm U.S. Senator Chris Coons, and I'm honored to join this virtual celebration of your critical work to strengthen democracy amid a transformative time in Sudan. From advancing a national agenda for women's rights, to bringing together the next generation of civil society leaders, to supporting the critical work of activists. This year's winners, as well as people across Sudan, have made amazing progress towards creating a more peaceful, just, and democratic Sudan. As a member of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I've been working closely with my colleagues in Congress, the administration, international organizations, and regional partners to support the Sudanese people during this critical time and to build a strong U.S.-Sudan relationship. To the Regional Center for Development and Training of Civil Society, to the NUBA Women for Education and Development Association, and to the Darfur Bar Association and other civil society partners. I'm inspired by your tireless efforts to risk everything to demand change and advocate for the rights of the Sudanese people. So congratulations on receiving this year's Democracy Award from the National Endowment for Democracy. I look forward to hearing more about your ongoing work to advance democracy, equal rights, and justice for all.
I am honored to join the National Endowment for Democracy today in recognizing the 2020 Democracy Award recipients and the courage and resilience of the Sudanese people. Each of the organizations being honored tonight was a major part of the Sudanese revolution and is incredibly deserving of this recognition. 2019 was an extraordinary year for the people of Sudan. As Prime Minister Hamdok remarked when he met with the Foreign Affairs Committee, Sudan will never be the same, he said. Indeed, Sudan's revolution is the country's first chance in a generation to become a truly inclusive democracy. However, the people of Sudan cannot stand alone in this endeavor, which is why I introduced the Sudan Democratic Transition, Accountability, and Fiscal Responsibility Transparency Act. The international community must work with groups like those being honored today to ensure that the remnants of the old authoritarian regime never again destabilize Sudan and suppress its citizens. I want to thank each of tonight's honorees for their bravery, dedication, and commitment to their country. We see your efforts, hear your voices, and are here to support your crucial advocacy work. Thank you.
After 30 years of tyranny, the Sudanese people stood peacefully together in the streets of Khartoum and across Sudan to oppose government corruption, abuse, and violence. It was an amazing display of courage and conviction through true suffering. This includes the slaughter of over 100 innocent people who were killed during a single protest in June of last year. But that did not stop their determination for a free and democratic Sudan. They continued their cries for democracy, even asked for more protesters, and were beaten and arrested. But their suffering wasn't in vain. In 2019, after months of these peaceful protests, the oppressive regime of Omar al-Bashir was overthrown. As a former chairman of the Sudan Caucus in the House of Representatives, I'm very familiar with the struggles the people of Sudan have faced and the challenges that still remain. However, I'm hopeful that a civilian-led government can build a better future for the Sudanese people. And that is why I joined my good friend, Chairman Elliot Engel, to introduce legislation that will support democratic progress in Sudan while holding spoilers accountable. The Sudan Democratic Transition, Accountability, and Fiscal Transparency Act. But bringing positive change to Sudan is not the government's job alone. It requires leadership at all levels in the country. And today I'd like to recognize and congratulate this year's honorees for providing that leadership. They are the Regional Center for Development and Training of Civil Society, the Nuba Women for Education and Development Association, and the Darfur Bar Association. Together, these groups have trained thousands of youth leaders and women rights activists, and they have provided legal assistance to democracy advocates. They've been on the ground working every day with leaders at the local level to advance peace, prosperity, and justice for all. Each group deserves this wonderful recognition. They represent the very best of Sudan. So it's been a great honor to help present this award, and I look forward to working with you in the future to ensure that Sudan continues its democratic transition. Thanks to all of you, and congratulations.
Hey, Ben Sass here, Senator for Nebraska. Obviously, it's a lot more fun to get to do this type of stuff and
for the Sudanese people.
Okay, we're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let me add my sincere congratulations to the Regional Center, to Nuedu, and to the Darfur Bar Association on your well-deserved honor. Your commitment to human rights, women, youth empowerment, justice, and democracy for the people of Sudan inspires all of us. We now turn to a panel discussion with representatives from all three organizations, moderated by PBS NewsHour Foreign Affairs correspondent Nick Schifrin. Nick has created week-long, in-depth series for NewsHour, one of which won a 2018 Peabody Award and the National Press Club's Edwin M. Hood Award for Diplomatic Correspondence. And prior to joining PBS, Nick worked for Al Jazeera America and ABC News. Nick, thank you so much for being with us today. I turn the floor over to you and our extraordinary panelists.
Linda, thank you so much. Thank you for those extraordinary videos and this extraordinary event. And obviously, thank you to the panelists who I'm about to introduce, who we're all here to see and talk with and participate in this conversation. So let me quickly introduce them. Camelia Kura is the founder and executive director of Nuba Women, which, as you've just seen, trained local women activists and is currently working to expand women's rights. Welcome, Camelia. Dr. Abdel Gurshab is the Director General of the Regional Center for Direct Development and Training, a longtime advocate, as many of you know, for young activists who train many of these protest leaders and is working to ensure their voices are heard today and into the future. And Abdul Rahman Al Ghassim is a co-founder of the Darfur Bar Association, which provided legal assistance, of course, to activists and is working on legal reforms, peace negotiations, and transitional justice and accountability going forward. So welcome to everyone. I'd like to split this a little less than an hour we have into three. We're going to talk about last year's events, the protests that began in late 2018, extended into 2019. We're going to talk about where Sudan is today, and we're going to talk about the future and where they see the future. But if I could ask quickly each of them to reflect on the award that you're receiving today. So Camelia Kura, if I could start with you, what does this award mean to you today?
Hi, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm really delighted and honored to be part of this important gathering today. And first of all, I want to appreciate and thank NED for this persistent support for the civil society in Sudan, and appreciate the work of the board of NED and the staff and all the governance of the board for this kind of work. I'm really so happy and so delighted, and I would say that I'm so proud and I'm happy that I'm representing Sudanese, one of the Sudanese civil society, and representing what the women, my sisters, my fellow women and youth did during the revolution. And this award actually is for them, is to say, this is, you have done it, you've struggled a lot, and a lot of chaos happened to your families and to yourself, and many of our friends passed away. And this time we will say that we are going to continue. We are happy for what you did for the country, and we are going to continue to see the democracy and to see this country developed and into full democracy and enjoy, and even our generation to enjoy the fruits of what happened since 2018. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Gurshab, what does this award mean to you and the organization?
Thank you, Nick. Firstly, allow me to salute the souls of our martyrs who paid their lives in the past decades, particularly during the youth uprising in 2018, in 2013, and in 2018, and during the sit-in. I would like also to express my sincere gratitude and thanks to the Board of Directors of the National Endowment for Democracy for their decision to use the 2020 Democracy Award to honor the people of the Sudan. It is my privilege and my pleasure to receive this Democracy Award on behalf of the people of Sudan, as it means a lot to me, to my colleagues at RCDCS, to the multitude of Sudanese civil society activists and citizens group. Indeed, it means a lot to all of us. It is a recognition and acknowledgement of the important role of the civil society organization as champions of change. It also shed light on the fact that civil society organizations are the key instruments through which the needs, desires, and aspirations of the Sudanese people are understood, acknowledged, that civil society is the best partner for support of a peaceful, constructive environment for change in Sudan. In fact, civil society in its broader concept provides a lens through which we see the impact of governance on the Sudanese people. I believe this award pays tribute to RCDC's passion, faith, and dedication to prevail human rights and democracy promotion were the intangible and valuable motivation to get through many obstacles, such as challenging environment under which RCDCS was operating. To support the democracy process in Sudan, it's really a long way. It is a long, difficult road. And I hope that with support of the international community, our partners and friends, we can get through it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Abdulrahman Al-Qasim, let us know, what does this award mean to you?
Well, thank you very much.
We can hear you a little faint, but yeah, let's give it a shot.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. It is a great honor to me.
Abdulrahman, if you can hear me, we're now struggling to hear you. I apologize. Should we try once more and then let's see what we can do? We can hear you, but you're very faint.
Okay, not hearing me.
That's a little better. Let's try that one more time. Let's try that.
Okay. Let guy to address you, my replacement, because I think that it is connection issue.
That's better. That's great.
Yeah. To begin from beginning. It is
That's
okay?
fine. That's okay.
Yeah, it is a great honor to me personally and to my colleagues in the Africa Association to receive this year's 2020 Democracy Award. And on behalf of the Sudanese people, I must say that National Endowment for Democracy long-time efforts and support to civil society in Sudan played a vital role in defeating dictatorship and laying down the foundation for the democratically vibrant country. The post days were the days of darkness in Sudan, and we have entered a new phase.
Abdulrahman, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Building a state that respects human order. Please allow me to salute my compatriots. Okay, let guys to let me.
It's okay. We heard a little bit at the beginning and end there. So
okay, my colleague is going to answer. My colleague, Guy, go to Guy, because I think that it is matter of connection. Okay, Guy with us here.
Sure.
On the panel. Yeah. Okay.
Guy, can you hear us?
Go to Guy.
All right. Well, we're going to figure that out in a second. And let me just keep going because I think we've got a lot to discuss, and we do want to hear from all the groups. And so, like I said, I want to go through this a little bit about past, present, and future. So, Camelia Kura, let me begin with you. You know, the protests that began in late 2018 continued through 2019. They were the longest in Sudan's history. They were the most diverse in Sudan's history. So, talk about how their success was achieved thanks in part to the persistence and leadership of women. Amelia, can you hear me? I think Amelia can't hear me either. Dr. Gershab, could I turn to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm a backup channel for Abdurrahman.
Okay,
if
great.
that's okay to just jump in or.
Great, Guy. Well, let me come to you in a second. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Gershab. Let's talk about part of the success of. Right? It's almost a cliche to say that young people protest. Talk about your belief in the power of young activists and what role and how important they were during these protests.
Okay, thank you, Nick. I think the uniqueness of December Revolution, apart from the other revolution, which I witnessed, I witnessed October Revolution in 1964, and also April Uprising, and of course I participated in that. But December Revolution is different. Different because of the participation of women, of youth, and from all part of the country. In fact, the previous revolution were only started in Khartoum, the capital, and then later on continue or extended to the other states. But this one started from the states outside Khartoum and come back to Khartoum. And we believe that the kind of multiculturalism of the youth composition, the youth resilience, the tactics they use in the demonstration, and the slogans they created spontaneously, that was great. That was unprecedented. We have, for example, myself have a vast experience in advocacy, but the thing which brought by these young demonstrators was amazing. I believe that the resilience, the commitment, the passion, the faith in the change, because they felt it in their heart, that was the road for success. Although the regime used every trick in the book to try to use them for violence, they kept it peaceful. And that is and that was the secret of this success of this revolution. And I believe the success of democracy in Sudan rely on these young people who are going to be watchdog and who are going to support the road to democracy, which we have just started. Thank you.
It is just the start, and there's a lot to go. Guy Yosef has joined us from the Darfur Bar Association. Apologies for some of our technical difficulties. Guy, if you can hear me, if you do want to briefly just say what this award means to the organization, and also talk about the protest, talk about how this was a national movement from including people from the peripheries. And it seems that the first protests where people in Khartoum understood some of the abuses endured by the people from Darfur. So how important was it that all sorts of people beyond Khartoum took place in these protests? And if you want to briefly say what the organization, what the award means to the organization.
Thank you so much. It is great an honor to me personally, and also to the colleague in within the Bani Darfur Bar Association to receive this year NEDS 2020 Democratic Award. On behalf of the Sudanese people, I must say that the NEDS long time effort and support to the civil society and also the Sudan played a really amazing role in providing, providing the need to the protester to defeat the regime. The struggle is not new for Sudan. It was there ever since the independence. I think it's safe to say. but the struggle kept shrinking until to the revolution day. That's where everyone was prostrated in all part of the Sudan. We had no option except to just stand up for the government and demand our right to be heard peacefully. However, that request was not something that the government of Sudan was familiar with or the previous regime in particular. And that's when everything started, starting from Darfur, which obviously started really long time ago. But then the people within the center were not fully convinced that the struggle was real. And also Nuba Mountain was approved to support that the struggle was happening in Darfur, and also Blue Nile and all part of the Sudan. And that's where people in Khartoum started also demanding in solidarity with those who were struggling for long term. And that brought to, to the change of regime. And as my colleague have stated earlier, this award is a true testimony of what really and how badly we need this democracy to reflect on us as a Sudanese, and particularly also within Sudan, to enjoy our life as a human being on this planet.
Well said. And Camelia Kura, if you can hear me, I hope you can. Can you just, the question I was trying to ask before, we've been talking about the aspects of the success so far of some of these protests last year, at least. Could you talk about the role that women played, so prominent, and the persistence and leadership of women?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. I think the role of women since it started not only in 2018. These women and the civil society, especially, their role started even earlier before that, when the women are working to educate and to build the capacity of fellow women and use with their rights and prepare them for the revolution. And I think, as I said, that the women took part in this revolution. They were leading the revolution. They were supporting the revolution. And even the communities, those women who are in the homes, who have not been able to go out on the streets and go with the people, they are also supporting the people, even bringing water, supporting them with food, supporting, they are really behind this because they want this revolution to succeed. So I can say very proudly that Sudanese women played a very vital and very important role in moving and changing this this regime. And actually the achievement, there are a lot of achievements. Maybe I can say that the document, the constitutional document for the transitional period, it came out with granting women's rights very clearly, that and it is a very strong legal reference. It guarantees 40% for the women representation, which is supposed to be reflected in all executive bodies and in all executive structures. So the formation of civil government itself is, to me, is one of the successes, one of the achievements. The formation of the anti-corruption, which was this was really a disease that Sudan suffered for a long time. It was also one of the success that I can also mention. Chief of Justice, which was given to a woman, and this maybe for us, I'm not sure whether it's our first time, but I think it is our first time after this regime to have this very essential position led by women. And I think the support of women is not just in this revolution that they have been in the street, but they did a lot of work even for themselves, bringing up these children with these new values, with this new concept that Sudan has to change. So I think there is a lot of things that we can talk about the achievement of the women and the role and the struggle that the women took throughout the 30 years or the more than of 30 years to support their families, to support the government, and to support themselves, to support their communities, and form organizations to support communities, the poor people, and even during the conflict, they are the one behind supporting the IDPs. I think the role of women is really is big, and they did it, and they finalized it when they supported the streets and when they were leading to remove this regime, which it was really a very big achievement, I can say.
You mentioned some of the present day changes and beginnings of change and the need to continue that change. So let's use that to pivot to the present. And let me just paint a picture of a few of the things that are going on so everybody has a sense. It's been almost a year, of course, since the generals signed a power sharing deal with the Forces for Freedom and Change. But many of the problems, as we all know, and we've been hearing about this morning, that led to the coup, and also many of the demands of the revolution are unmet. Just a few points, if I may, to make. There are tensions between the civilian prime minister and the generals, who've seized key portfolios, including peace talks, and continue to have large investments in the economy. We've seen, of course, an assassination attempt against the prime minister. Islamist supporters of the former regime remain quite organized. Tensions within the military and intelligence services remain, and of course, an economic crisis. We can't not talk about that. 2/3 of the 4 million who are in Sudan live in poverty, fuel, electricity, wheat shortages, the things that people in Sudan go through every day. At the same time, Camelia started talking about those major social reforms we've seen in the last few months related to women's rights, anti-corruption, and of course, in the last 3 weeks, we've seen protests again, the most significant protests since last fall. And so let me start there with Dr. Gershab. The neighborhood resistance committees that you helped create are leading or helping lead the current protests, the recent protests. So can you talk about the specific places where the transition to democracy can improve right now?
Yes, Nick. The neighborhood committees or neighborhood resistance committees were spontaneously formed. Nobody formed them. They spontaneously, from their passion, their faith on change, they come out on the streets. And they were very, very organized, because otherwise some kind of informer will get through. So they were tied within each neighborhood, and that was one of the opportunities which make them more successful. What we see for them in the future, I would like to see that the youth being given more role to play, more opportunity to their voice to be heard. For example, I want to see there will be like with the parliament, there will be a kind of formal or semi-formal youth parliament. I want to see that there will be an opportunity for them to have effective role as the local governance. For example, I want to see some changes in policies and laws to give ways for the youth to be represented. For example, I'm looking forward for the new electoral law to see that to reduce the age of of candidates who will stand for office, to bring them down to even to 20 or say 25. Why not? If they can vote at 18 years old, why not they can stand for election? So there is so many areas which I would like youth to be given the chance really to contribute. They are very creative, they are very thankful, and it's not only a person like me who is over 70 years can lead the country. I think young people can lead the country. Why not? They led this great revolution. Thank you. I just want to get back to the role of women. When we see a young lady like Rivka in Shambat throw back the tear gas to that was a great kind of big solution, never left my mind. But when I see a student in Ahfad University jump over the wall to relieve her colleague from the police, that again was a very kind of a picture which really gave the people during the demonstration more energy to continue. Thank you.
No, and absolutely, and that picture was celebrated. Guy Youssef, let me go to you and talk about the present, right? We want to, of course, talk about the future, as Dr. Gershab laid out so eloquently there about how young people can lead the future. Talk about the present for a second. The protesters who returned in the last few weeks, they're demanding justice for those killed last year, of course. So how can justice today be improved, and what are the aspects of justice that you're working on today?
I think, yes, there are, in my perspective, there are some laws that need to be replaced and aligned with the international standard. As our Minister of Justice is working, day and night in preparing to extensive studies and discussion to develop the draft of laws that and submitted them to the Sovereign Council for approval. We fully agree with those laws because the current or the youth are demanding freedom that really reflects their interests, which means they can do whatever they want freely, but it has to be legal and aligned with the state laws. That's basically what majority of Sudanese youth want. But again, it's kind of tricky to break a system of a country that was built for 30 plus years. You cannot break that system within a year or two or so. It takes a while. But the step that the Minister of Justice has taken to repealing or replacing the laws that are unnecessary, I think is the major step that could lead to true change in Sudan. And again, as he stated earlier, also that people can criticize government and also deliver their opinion to the authority if they don't like something. I think that defines freedom and democracy. If you could fully criticize government, which is part of the right for the citizen to do so. If we're seeing that in Sudan, I think there is a progress towards change. However, it takes a while. And what we all want is that to at least, live in Sudan, to feel home, because we struggled for so many years. And I think it's the time to, step aside and live in a country that really respects human rights, human dignity, and has respect for international law. And what the current government, transitional government, is doing, I think is the right steps towards accomplishing that promise. As for the Sudanese judiciary, also, we know very well that the judiciary is not yet independent according to the internationally agreed standard. when there are a larger number of judges which are brought by the previous regime, according to political affiliation, and secondly, the limits competence of judges, it's a little bit, I don't know, that area is not clear to me, because it would be tough to implement the current demand of the public, while some judges might still have a political affiliation with the previous regime. But generally, in my view, I think we as the public, we need to stick behind the rule of law, and the right rule of law that would transform Sudan to the better direction is what has been taken currently to reform all those previous laws.
So Camille Kura, can I ask you specifically about the laws and how much progress they represent, and also ministries? So women ministers lead 5. There are 5 female ministers, and the government's criminalized female genital mutilation, removed laws that dictated what women could wear, could study, how much they could travel. Talk to us about how much progress that represents.
I can say that the progress is, as I said earlier, that the document, it has really guaranteed 40%, but most of these things are still on paper, and we are pushing and we are calling for the government actually to accelerate and implement the document itself, the document to be implemented. So far, the progress is step forward, which is still majority of is it on paper, as I said, but it needs a political will from our government to fully implement the document. It needs a lot of work on the ground as well, because there are some like some of the laws that have been approved and passed, but it needs the blessing of the community. As we know that Sudan is still a conservative country, a lot of culture, we have cultures, we have traditions, and I think this also needs a lot of work on the ground to be done, raising awareness on certain issues. Change of behavior need to change, because as I said earlier, that this country is really the damage is really deep, and even the as I am talking now, that we have a lot of changes, our achievements, but still these things need to be in practice, and changes in behaviors and attitudes, and still this is still actually needs a lot of work. The participation rate is still under 40%, is not 40% as it is there in the document. The upcoming of participation in this legislation has to really be 40. The participation of government, especially these days that the government is nominating people to the state governance. I think also we are calling for 40% for the women to participate in this. And I think another thing also is the progress being made in approval of National Action Plan, which is NAP, for women, peace and security. However, there is need for urgent implementation for the NAP, and more urgent need for more women, as I said, in governance, appoint women commissioners, and also protocol, which is an African protocol, and it's also needs to be ratified. I think this is some of the achievement and some of the things that need to be accelerated by the government in order to implement, to see ourselves that the constitution is being implemented.
Dr. Gershaw, we just heard Camelia talk about, change of behavior, change of attitudes, working on the ground. What are you and the young people you're working with, advocating, doing in order to achieve that, and in order to achieve that future that you talked about before, in which Sudan is led by young people?
Thank you for this important question. We have just done a kind of a survey across Sudan to try to find out the reasons or the factors or the barrier from youth political participation, and how this could promote their future participation. And in fact, most of the things that come out of this study, which is yet to be completed, is that they have to improve the quality of education. For example, incorporating civic education into the curricula of basic education, and go up even to higher education, university education, regarding the principle and concept of peace. We believe that, and thankfully, that the Minister of Education has really started taking some steps towards that end, to try to incorporate civic education concept into the basic education. And I believe this will be a big step, that it will bring changes from the beginning, because and we believe that even this should go beyond, even before education in the kindergartens. And the amount of damage which happened which is inherited with this transitional government from the previous regime, regarding socio-economic and political aspect, is beyond imagination. The corruption, the destruction of industry, destruction of agricultural schemes, is beyond imagination. And I believe it needs a longer time to put these things on the right track. We have this destruction continue for 30 years. Why not now? This transitional government only spent, in fact, not complete a year. It is months, 9 months or 10 months, in fact. So let us be patient. I think that they are on the right track. It needs more support from the public, more resilience and patience, and we could be there.
It is 11:25 or so. We've got about 20 minutes left. I just want to ask one or two last questions, and I'll move to the questions that were submitted by you all beforehand. Thank you for that. Yosef, if I could come to you to talk about what justice looks like in the future. What does justice look like, frankly, for Darfur, and as Bashir's trial has just begun?
I think the issues are super complex in the Sudan, and the matter since the formation of the hybrid transitional government have become difficult to reach a decision quickly in a certain issues that are complex. I think in Darfur, I don't really think there would be a peaceful kind of environment if the criminals who commit crime against humanity and abuse their power to victimize the resident of the region, or people from Darfur, are not hand over to the International Criminal Court. I think it would be difficult to safeguard the region. And also the demands for many Darfuris within and abroad are not believing in anything except to hand over those criminals to International Criminal Court. It might take a while, and also it might be something that the the government or the Sudanese judiciary system would have to agree on that. If they do, then I think there would be a peaceful Darfur. But if that won't happen, it would be a little difficult, because even yesterday or the day before, there was an attack in Al Jinena, and there are these groups that are out of control and are not easily identifiable to know which part they are or belong to, or where they're coming from, and why they're attacking the civilian. I think these are people who suffer enough, and they have, they have gone through a lot. The only criminal prosecution to the criminals within International Criminal Court, I think, in my view, is the only option to safeguard Darfur and provide peace and security in the region.
And Camelia Kura, last question from me is to you. You talked about helping prepare women to run for parliament, the participation rate of women, female ministers having substantive portfolios. If it's successful, what does the future in your mind look like? Not only for women in leadership roles, but how that changes the country.
I think this actually will be a good and big achievement for women to have a brighter future. They, when they participate in the parliament, they will have more opportunities and more chance to raise their issues and be part of decision making, and they will be able to shape the future. And that's why for us as NUWEIDA and other civil society organizations working and training women in this issue of civic education, and also training them to be prepared for election. And I think it's one of the things that also pushing and asking that this document should be implemented, because we have even this electoral law is still there. It has not yet been established. Even the election commission is not been established. And I think, and because we are really looking forward for proper democratic transition after the transitional period, for women to be elected, to participate in election, and that is the real democracy that we want the country to move to, and we want the women to participate in that. And I think this will be really, as I said, that the women will have an opportunity, will have the strength to shape the future for their coming generation. And I believe in the strength of the women, actually, because what they did in the revolution, they can do. Even when they are ministers, they can do, even when they are governors in their states, in their local governments. I think they have that power, they have that knowledge, and they have that strength to shape their future and to shape their destiny.
So we have a number of questions that we received from you. Thank you very much. I'm going to combine a couple of them and direct one to each of our panelists. We've got about 13 minutes or so got about 3 minutes, 4 minutes per question and answer. So Dr. Gershab, if I could combine two questions to you from Manal Alagabo, who's an environmental activist in Sudan, and Mohammed Al-Obeid, who is the 2019 Obama Foundation African leader, or one of them. And let me just read some of Mohammed's question. Many Sudanese activists, including myself, have been trying to have a conversation about shifting narratives and making changes in our community toward a more progressive, accepting, and inclusive community that provides equal rights, opportunities to all members, regardless of religion, politics, race, gender, or sexual orientation. But these efforts have faced a lot of difficulties getting through to our people who have been mentally blocked, his words again, by sets of conservative rules and regulations, which are enforced into our community through years of dictatorship. The question is, how would you advise Sudanese activists, including myself, who are working in that direction to successfully carry on with that task? Dr. Gershab.
Yes, as been mentioned earlier, one of my colleagues that the traditions and culture of the Sudanese, sometimes it is difficult to try to change. But if you use the right approach, for example, when we want to do advocacy, whether, for example, in Eastern Sudan, we have to find the key to the people there. For somebody like me cannot go there and train people, to try to lecture people about changes. It needs somebody from the culture itself to see, for example, a woman who she is a community leader, or say a sheikh there, to try to approach this. And as I mentioned earlier, that we need to start from bottom up. We need to see this as, because in education, in media, all these kind of things can gradually be changed. But that's why I say that this need a longer time. It's not overnight, and because this regime, one of it is bad things that happen, that try to make brainwash for the people, and try to dominate one kind of culture, which is a fundamentalist culture. In fact, not even I don't want to say it's Islamic culture. It is a fundamentalist culture, whose they think that and they urbanization for the country, which is a multicultural country. So this is need a lot of work, a lot of tools and techniques to try to change this. And go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please finish.
And we have been using different kind of tools. We have been using music. We have been using cartoons. We have been using theaters to try to change this kind of culture, or say of beliefs.
Camelia Kura, let me come back to you before I go to Guy Yosef, because that point that Dr. Gershov made, bottom up, is a question from Michael Beer, who is the director of Nonviolence International. He says, there are many efforts at democracy development from the top down, from Khartoum to the local levels. What is happening for democracy development from the bottom up in local communities in various states? And are we seeing states redrafting their own constitutions? And if not, why not?
And actually, this is the policy or the technique that, for us as civil society, we've taken to bring the bottom-up approach, because it has been for a long time people on the ground not actually having that opportunity. But for us to make change, to create change in the community, it needs people on the ground to be aware. And that is why awareness raising, from community leaders, students, and even educated and uneducated people, educating them on their rights, educating them on how even to be to get their rights, proper of getting their rights, and their also, it's not only rights but their duties as well. So I think even the local teaching or training them on local issues, local governments, I think is one of the things that also we are coming up with, because the participation of women in the legislative or in the parliament is not only, we are not only talking about the parliament in Khartoum. We are talking about the parliament at the local level, at the bayams, at the regional levels, very at their local levels. You know, that is where the strengths. These women build their strengths, because when you participated at the local, at the community level, you are coming, you are building yourself and coming up till when you reach the national level. And I think this is our how we started doing our work systematically, participating in also forming their own laws. You know, participating, knowing what is their laws at the state level. How can they participate? What are the opportunities at the local level? They can make breakthrough, or they can change, or they can be part of. I think for us as Nueda, we really decided right from the beginning to work with the people from the bottom, bringing them up. And also we have activities like when we build the capacity of the people on the ground at the grassroots level. We also have like policy forums where we bring the policy or the politicians from up, or the decision-making people, to meet with them and understand from them, ask them questions. This is how they get they're becoming visible, and also knowing and understanding how other things are being done in the other places. So I think I don't know whether I have really answered the question, but for me, this is what we started from the beginning, building the capacity from down approach, and it is really a very successful approach, and it is. Because we didn't do the work this way, we will have the elites, will have the people up there. They cannot bring the revolution alone. But because this revolution brought everybody on board, and this is the result of people being educated even down on the ground. So I think it's really very crucial to continue building the policy from the ground, helping the communities and helping the women, the youth at the ground levels to come up with this, even knowing their rights, knowing their civil rights, knowing how to participate in good governance, you know, in playing good leadership. All these things are being done right from bottom up. And I think this is what I can say regarding this question.
If I can add something here on it.
Very quickly, Dr. Gershak, because we only have about 4 minutes.
I just want, for example, when we talk about the constitution making, I would like to see that the constitution be done in a participatory, inclusive, and transparent way, not only from academic and an expert. I would like to see that the ordinary people have a say to see how Sudan need to be governed, whoever they would govern it. But are they wanted, say, six regions, or they want 18 states? Because how they want the public services be delivered from Khartoum as the center, or from the local communities and local localities. So for example, when we want to work on constitution making, we want to see that it is of the interest of everybody, of the lay person, whether it's a man or a woman. So this is a message for our Minister Nasruddin Abdel Bari, that I would like to see the constitution making be participatory, transparent, and inclusive. Everybody should have his say on it.
Yusuf, we only have 3 minutes, so let me just give you the last.
Okay, well, I'm a strong believer of a rule of law and respect to the human right. The formation of a state starts from those fundamental principle. Having a strong constitution, it will guide everyone to follow it, and that constitution have to include everyone as voice in Sudan, whoever is Sudanese. And again, like, it doesn't matter whether they're female, male, gay, as long as they're Sudanese, they have the full legitimacy and right to add their voice and ideas on forming a true Sudan that would respect their rights and dignity. That's all. That's if all Sudan is, I'm using it because previous regime was so divisive, marginalized some part of the Sudan, and focus it or built some part of the Sudan and marginalized it other, such as Darfur, Blue Nile, Nuba Mountain, and that's the major reason why South Sudan became a state today. If we had a strong constitution back then, we would have had a strong united Sudan. And again, like we really hope that the peace process that is taking place in Juba will enhance justice and bring all Sudan, or if that doesn't go accordingly or in a way that we all want, then we have also an option of forming a state that will sort of form a federalism system where everyone will rule just own region. That way, it makes it easier for us also to control the specific area or the state that people live in, so that they would be more secure in that sense.
Well, I think that is a hopeful and wonderful message to end on. It is 11:45, 11:44, and so unfortunately we are out of time, but thank you very much on behalf of the National Endowment of Democracy and everyone with us today, to the three of you, Dr. Gershab, Camelia Kura, Yosef, and to your organizations and to your extraordinary work that you have done that we're celebrating today. So I'm pleased to welcome back Carl Gershman, of course, President of National Endowment of Democracy, to make some closing remarks.
Thank you, Nick. This has been an extraordinary panel, and I want to thank everyone who's taken part in this really marvelous event that we've had today. And I want to thank Andy Card and Linda Thomas Greenfield and everyone, the representatives of the Sudanese government who were with us. It's been just a tremendous event. And I want to especially thank the NED staff who worked so hard to put this on. I want to thank Elizabeth Hoffman, Zach Evans, Mike Rudzinski, Kasi Baumgartner, and Scott Hogue, Tiffany Lynch, who manages our grants program in Sudan, Jane Riley Jacobson, and Jody Herman. All of them, I want to thank them. This has been very, very hard to put on such a large and complex event virtually, which we had to do because of COVID, but they really did a magnificent job. And on behalf of everyone, I want to thank them. Our purpose today was not just to honor brave Democrats for what they've done, but also to inspire commitment to meeting the very difficult challenges that lie ahead in Sudan, and I think we did that. Our award ceremony was also a vivid demonstration, I think, of the universal aspiration for freedom, justice, and human dignity. And the example of Sudan's democracy movement, of our awardees, inspires not only all of us, but really people everywhere around the world. May we move forward with steadfastness and solidarity. And I want to thank you all for being with us virtually and in spirit. It's really been a great day. Thank you.